Your girls are the very image of their mother.
Are you a fan of HBO's House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones? Are there any similarities between both shows? Have you ever wondered if some of the Game of Thrones characters would perfectly fit into the House of the Dragon? Would you like to know these characters? Then sit tight and watch this video to the end, as we will discuss this in detail. First up, are there any similarities between the two shows? Game of Thrones is considered one of the most popular TV series of all time, so HBO's decision to return to the universe in which it's set made complete sense and could be significant. House of the Dragon, established 200 years ahead of the events of the actual series, recounts the history of the Targaryen family, the dragon-riding Velaryons who governed Westeros for 3 centuries. Whereas the show's worlds, aesthetics, and overall tone are very similar, House of the Dragon could also differ from its predecessor in various ways.
Let it be known, anyone whose tongue dares to question the birth of Princess Rhaenyra's sons.
Compared to Game of Thrones, it's a slower and more romantic show fueled by political suspense and intra-family fighting. That makes perfect sense, considering the time frame of the prequel series. Nonetheless, the relatively new series takes excellent pains to elicit its predecessor. It has the same opening theme and the same style of surprising deaths. Despite the significant time difference, the outfits, sets, and entire appearance of Westeros are incredibly similar to those in Game of Thrones. Coming right up, what are the similarities in their aesthetics? Here are the significant similarities between both House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. Note, spoilers ahead. If you showed someone the first few minutes of a random Game of Thrones episode and the initial 5 minutes of an unexpected House of the Dragon episode back to back, they probably wouldn't be able to distinguish between the two, even if you had shown them the opening theme sequences side by side. The only thing that would distinguish them could be the card stating 2 different titles. Most of the aesthetic details that characterize the first show are still observed, essentially unchanged. In the prequel, from Ramin Djawadi's Emmy-winning soundtrack to the appearance and the feel of the Red Keep, this is not to say there haven't been changes. The most notable difference is most likely the absence of dragon visual images in House Targaryen's domain, which was understandably removed following Robert's rebellion. Also, some details, such as the Kingsguard uniform, have been changed, but unless you're a costume designer or a fan of George R.R. Martin, you're unlikely to notice. Coming up next, are there any similarities like their villains? While many characters in House of the Dragon are morally questionable, many are evil, similar to most of the villains in Game of Thrones. If you are saddened by the deaths of despicable plotlines like Joffrey Baratheon and Ramsay Bolton, you could be a threat to yourself and others. Still, you'll also be pleased to see equally grotesque villains parade through the prequel. Aegon II, Tom Glencarney, and Aemon Targaryen, Ewan Mitchell, 2 of Alicent's children, are among the most evident culprits in the evil for the purpose of evil sweepstakes. We hardly see either of them communicate with their father, but it's clear immediately that Aegon is the wrong person. Childhood abuse motivates Aemon, but it does not explain the level of evil toward which he rises. In short, both Targaryen brothers are depraved, and the elder brother receives no justification for his actions. Other actors of moderately more explained evil appear and disappear. Otto Hightower, Rhys Ifans, repeatedly claims to be acting for the good of the realm, but it's undeniable that his only genuine concern is putting his heir on the Iron Throne. There's also Daemon, who seems to be in Rhaenyra's service at times, but goes to prove to be an intensely violent and self-interested individual time and again. Keep watching along closely. We wouldn't want you to miss out on what we have lined up for you.
I had hoped to bear your children.
We're about to fill you in on everything you need to know about why some of the Game of Thrones characters could fit perfectly into House of the Dragon, and what dragons we would have liked to see in it as well. So don't go anywhere. Up next, are there any similarities in their rampant deaths? Think again if you assume the middle of the Targaryen dynasty could be a less violent era for Westeros than the Game of Thrones sequence of events. Instead, all your preferred ways to die have returned, and they're bloodier than ever. Being burnt to death by dragonfire, trampled to death in a melee, or experiencing Kristen Cole bash your head in. This happens on multiple occasions. One could argue that House of the Dragon tries to go even further in its horrific depictions of death, possibly to outdo its horrifying predecessor. Everyone should realize the kind of TV series they're watching at this juncture. Game of Thrones killed plotlines with wild abandon for 8 seasons, and House of the Dragon continues that trend. Nothing, not even being such an innocent child, can protect you from the series' unrelenting violence, which is a big part of what makes it so dramatic. You'll rapidly learn to look look elsewhere if you expect less graphic violence from the prequel series. Now, why would some of Game of Thrones characters perfectly fit in House of the Dragon? The initial season of House of the Dragon just concluded, and for the near future, as fans anticipate any tidbit of information about the already noted Season 2, discussion and scrutiny involving the series will be at an all-time high. One subject of debate among fans is which Game of Thrones characters will function effectively in this new yet recognizable show. There are a few Game of Thrones actors who would work well in House of the Dragon, perhaps because they fit the tone and plot of the show, or simply because they'd blend in seamlessly. A few Game of Thrones plot lines would work well in House of the Dragon, ranging from tricksters to warriors to monarchs and patriarchs. Coming right up, would Sir Davos Seaworth be a perfect fit? The Onion Knight is among the most devoted characters in Game of Thrones and the few outstanding characters. For these reasons, he would be ideal for the House of the Dragon. He would undoubtedly be a smuggler in the absence of Stannis. However, if he can gain favor with House Velaryon, for example, his knowledge of the seas and overall skill as a right-hand man might be precious to someone significant, just as he was all through Game of Thrones. Would Marjorie/Olenna Tyrell function effectively as well? Olenna, with her unrivaled fortitude and brilliance as House Tyrell's matriarch, and Marjorie, with her expertise in navigating the game while staying likable, are two characters with authority in the grasp that could pile them into numerous eras of Westeros. These two fearsome persons could have been instrumental in the Dance of the Dragons. They might not have had dragons, which is why House Tyrell remains neutral in the novels, but their diverse set of resources and smarts might have made them interesting to watch during this period, lest they stand idly watching as the war raged on. Also, could Viserys Targaryen have thrived in House of the Dragon, notwithstanding Daenerys' descent from grace, the antics of Aegon and Aemon, and Daemon's purely evil brilliance? Viserys Targaryen from Game of Thrones' initial season may be the most unlikable of the bunch. That doesn't mean he wouldn't have thrived in House of the Dragon. It's during the reign of House Targaryen, just before its eventual downfall. Viserys might have loved every minute of it, mainly because he could get away with pretty much any sick and depraved thing he wished, as evidenced by Daemon and Aegon. Furthermore, could Daenerys Targaryen have also blended in perfectly? Daenerys has none of her brother's excessive pride or vanity and is more akin to Rhaenyra Targaryen. All the same, she would have thrived alongside the House of the Dragon, just as her brother did. Her fearlessness, natural affinity for her ancestors, tenacity, and other qualities combined to create a fantastic character that would have been entirely different but still phenomenal in House of the Dragon. She may have been less fun to watch without her three dragons, her errors, or her developed character dynamics, but Daenerys herself might have preferred to be present at that moment compared to what she was given. Finally, could the three Game of Thrones dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, have thrived in House of the Dragon? The three Game of Thrones dragons might have thrived in Westeros history when dragons weren't at their peak in numbers but were present in reasonable amounts. They might not have formed a bond with Daenerys, but they would have lived much longer and much more peaceful lives until the Dance of the Dragons. Assuming Vhagar did not slay them, the three lovely creatures would have fit in perfectly with dozens of others of their kind. Alright, that's it for today's video. We hope you got some information out of it. Do you agree with our picks? Let us know in the comment section. Also, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.